Chosen one, listen to me carefully. What I am about to share is not for everyone. This is an urgent and important message, and it is meant only for those who truly walk the divine path of God. If someone does not seek God sincerely, if someone does not carry a burden for truth, this message will not hold their attention. But you stayed, and that already tells me something about you. This message reached you at the exact right moment. Not early, not late, right on time. Heaven does not work randomly. And if you are hearing this now, it means God knew your heart was ready to understand what most people would miss. Chosen one, your attitude in the middle of pressure left heaven silent. God himself observed the way you carried yourself when things did not make sense. Even Michael, the great warrior angel, was stunned. Not by noise, not by drama, but by your composure, your restraint, and your faith when it would have been easier to break. Many people talk faith. Few live it quietly. And what you did without realizing it shifted something in the spiritual realm. Stay with me until the end, because what you are about to understand will bring you peace, clarity, and deep confirmation about who you are and why you have been tested the way you have. Before we continue, chosen ones, give a like to this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, tap the bell icon, and share this message with other chosen ones, and comment 777 below to declare that you are aligned with God's purpose for your life. Section 2. The attitude. Heaven expected versus the attitude you chose. Chosen one, let me speak to you calmly and clearly now, the way a wise teacher speaks to a student who is finally ready to understand. Most people think heaven responds to words. They believe heaven moves when someone cries louder, prays longer, or explains their pain better. But heaven is far more attentive than that. Heaven watches attitude first. You see, when pressure entered your life, there was already an expectation in the spiritual realm. Not an expectation of failure, but an observation. Heaven wanted to see how you would carry yourself when answers did not come quickly, when doors stayed closed, when people misunderstood you, when silence replaced reassurance. That moment was not meant to destroy you. It was meant to reveal you. Many would have reacted, complained, grown bitter, questioned God loudly, withdrawn in anger. Some would have tried to prove themselves. Others would have collapsed emotionally. Heaven sees this pattern every day. It is common, predictable, understandable. But that is not what you did. Your situation had every reason to harden you. The delays, the unfairness, the loneliness, the internal exhaustion. All of it should have pushed you into resentment. And yet something different happened within you. You chose restraint instead of reaction. You chose composure instead of chaos. You chose to remain steady when everything around you was uncertain. And this is where I need you to understand something important. There is a difference between emotion and attitude. Emotion is what you feel. Attitude is how you decide to stand while feeling it. Heaven does not condemn emotion. God understands exhaustion. God understands tears. But attitude is the posture of the soul. It reveals maturity. You may not have felt strong. In fact, you may have felt tired beyond words. But you did not allow your weariness to turn into rebellion. You did not allow your confusion to turn into disrespect. You did not allow your pain to turn into bitterness. That matters more than you realize. Heaven expected noise. It expected questions filled with frustration. It expected emotional collapse. But instead, it saw discipline, quiet endurance, a calm spirit trying to understand rather than accuse. That kind of posture is rare, and rarity always draws attention. Let me tell you something gently because I do not want you to misunderstand this. Your value is not in being perfect. Your value was revealed in how you carried imperfection. You did not pretend to have all the answers. You did not act like you were above pain. You simply stayed aligned. And alignment speaks louder than effort. There were moments you wanted to speak up, explain yourself, defend your heart, but you chose silence. Not because you were weak, but because something inside you understood timing. You trusted that truth does not need panic, that clarity does not need force, that God does not need you to fight every battle out loud. This is where heaven leaned in, because attitude reveals trust, and trust is the language God responds to fastest. Many people believe faith is proven when prayers are answered quickly, but real faith is proven when silence stretches and attitude remains intact, when obedience stays present even without reward, when humility stays alive even without recognition. Chosen one, you did not perform for heaven. You lived authentically, and authenticity carries authority in the spiritual realm. Heaven saw that you were not demanding answers. You were seeking understanding, that you were not questioning God's goodness, only His timing, that you were not abandoning your values, even when you felt unseen. That kind of internal discipline is not taught, it is forged. And let me ease your mind about something. If you ever wondered whether you were doing enough, whether you were failing because nothing seemed to move, let that burden go now. Heaven does not measure effort the way humans do. Heaven measures alignment. You stayed aligned when it would have been easier to drift. You stayed respectful when disappointment could have made you sharp. You stayed patient when impatience felt justified. That is why this moment mattered. This is not about pride. This is not about being better than others. This is about understanding that you were being shaped quietly, intentionally, without applause. God was not ignoring you. He was observing you. And what He observed was not weakness. It was restraint. I want you to hear this clearly because many chosen ones struggle with unnecessary guilt. You were allowed to feel tired. You were allowed to feel confused. But you never allowed those feelings to rule you. That shows spiritual maturity beyond your years. Heaven expected you to react like everyone else. Instead, you responded differently. And response always outranks reaction. Reaction is emotional. Response is intentional. Reaction is immediate. Response is measured. Reaction comes from fear. Response comes from trust. And trust is what stunned the spiritual realm. There are people who talk about faith endlessly, but lose posture the moment pressure arrives. Then there are people like you, who say very little but carry themselves with dignity even when life becomes heavy. Heaven recognizes that difference immediately. Chosen one, do not minimize this season. Do not brush it off as wasted time. This was training for your inner world, because where God is leading you, attitude will matter more than talent. Character will matter more than charisma. Stability will matter more than speed. You are being prepared, not punished. So take a deep breath here. Let your shoulders relax. Let your mind slow down. You did not fail. You did not miss anything. You did not disappoint God. On the contrary, your quiet strength spoke volumes. And this is only the beginning of what you are about to understand. Stay with me. Section 3. Why your silence spoke louder than most prayers. Chosen one, let me help you understand something that many believers struggle with, but few ever fully grasp. Silence is not absence. Silence is not weakness. Silence is not surrender. In the spiritual realm, silence often carries more authority than words ever could. Most people believe prayer must always be verbal, emotional, expressive. They think heaven only listens when voices are raised or tears are visible. But heaven has never been impressed by noise. Heaven is impressed by alignment. And alignment does not always announce itself. There were moments when you wanted to say something. Moments when you wanted to explain your heart, defend your intentions, clarify your position. You felt misunderstood. You felt misjudged. You felt overlooked. And yet something within you held back. Not out of fear, but out of wisdom you didn't even realize you were carrying. That restraint was not accidental. Silence, when chosen consciously, is a sign of spiritual maturity. It means you trust God enough to speak on your behalf, It means you believe timing matters more than urgency. It means you understand that not every truth needs to be delivered immediately to still be true. And heaven noticed. You see, many prayers fail not because they are wrong, but because they are rushed. They come from anxiety rather than trust, from desperation rather than surrender. But your silence came from a different place. It came from inner stillness, even while your mind was tired and your heart was heavy. That kind of silence is powerful. Let me say this gently because I want you to feel relief, not pressure. God was not waiting for you to say the right words. God was watching how you carried yourself when words were unnecessary, when you chose calm over confrontation, when you chose patience over panic, when you chose humility over explanation. That posture spoke volumes. Heaven understands something humans often forget. Words can be manipulated, emotions can be exaggerated, but attitude cannot be faked for long. Silence reveals whether a heart is secure or restless, and yours showed security even while you were uncertain. There were nights when you prayed quietly, not because you lacked faith, but because you were tired of repeating the same questions. You didn't stop believing, you stopped forcing. And that shift is critical. Forcing creates resistance. Trust creates movement. Silence is where trust matures. I know part of you wondered if your quietness meant you were falling behind spiritually. You saw others speaking boldly, declaring loudly, appearing confident. Meanwhile, you felt still, reserved, introspective. Let me free you from that comparison right now. Loud faith and quiet faith are not measured the same way. God does not favor volume. God favors sincerity. Your silence was not empty. It was full of listening. While others were speaking, you were absorbing. While others were reacting, you were discerning. While others were demanding, you were learning to wait without losing your posture. That is not inactivity. That is preparation. Heaven trusts those who can remain steady without constant reassurance. This is something few people are told. Silence is often the final test before elevation, because when God knows you will not panic in quiet seasons, He knows you can be trusted with louder responsibilities. Think about this carefully. If God speaks in stillness, then stillness is not the absence of God. It is often His preferred environment. Your silence told heaven that you were listening, even when you didn't understand everything yet. There is also something deeply healing about what you did. By not speaking unnecessarily, you protected your peace. You refused to let emotional exhaustion turn into careless words. You refused to let frustration turn into spiritual disrespect. You refused to let pain turn into bitterness. That takes discipline. Many people pray themselves into exhaustion because they never allow trust to take over. They keep repeating prayers because they fear silence means abandonment. But you reached a place where you understood something sacred. God hears you the first time. Silence does not scare Him. Silence invites Him. Your quiet endurance showed heaven that your faith was not transactional. You were not trusting God only for outcomes. You were trusting Him with the process. That distinction is everything. You did not threaten to leave your faith if answers didn't come. You did not bargain with God out of fear. You simply stayed. And staying is one of the strongest prayers there is. Let me also address something personal, because many chosen ones carry this quietly. There were moments when you felt invisible, when your efforts seemed unnoticed, when your discipline went unrecognized, and yet you kept your heart soft. That is rare. Heaven is not impressed by those who demand attention. Heaven is drawn to those who remain faithful without it. Your silence told heaven you were secure enough to let God handle the outcome. And here is something that may bring you deep peace. Silence does not delay answers. Silence often accelerates alignment. When you stop filling the space with fear, clarity can finally enter. That is why things began shifting internally before anything changed externally. You became calmer, less reactive, more discerning. You stopped explaining yourself to people who were committed to misunderstanding you. You stopped chasing validation. You started protecting your energy. That inner shift was the real breakthrough. External change follows internal alignment. Your silence was not passive. It was intentional. And intention is what heaven responds to. Chosen one, do not regret the moments you stayed quiet. Do not replay conversations you didn't have. Do not wish you had spoken sooner or louder. What you didn't say preserved something precious inside you, and heaven values preservation. There is a reason the loudest transformations often begin in silence. Seeds grow in darkness, roots deepen underground, strength develops where no one is watching. You were growing, and growth rarely makes noise. So let go of the fear that you were overlooked. Let go of the worry that you missed your moment. Silence was your moment. It trained your spirit to listen, your mind to settle, and your heart to trust without constant reassurance. Heaven heard you clearly, and what your silence communicated cannot be undone. Stay with me, because now I need to show you what that silence set in motion beyond what you can see. Section 4. The moment your attitude interrupted heaven. Chosen one, there comes a moment in every true spiritual journey when something subtle yet decisive happens. It is not dramatic. It does not arrive with thunder or spectacle. It happens quietly, almost unnoticed by the world. But heaven recognizes it immediately. That moment is when your inner posture shifts from enduring to aligning. That is the moment you experienced, whether you realized it or not. You must understand this clearly. Heaven is not chaotic. Heaven is structured, ordered, intentional. Nothing there reacts emotionally. Everything responds lawfully. And when something interrupts heaven, it is never because of noise. It is because alignment has reached a level that demands attention. Your attitude did not scream. It did not beg. It did not force movement. It simply settled into trust. And that is what caused the interruption. There was a point when you stopped asking why so often. Not because curiosity disappeared, but because peace entered. You didn't give up. You didn't grow cold. You simply stopped wrestling God for control. You surrendered the urgency, not the desire. That internal adjustment is rare. Most people never reach it. This is where heaven paused. You see, desperation keeps spiritual systems observing. Trust activates them. When you no longer tried to rush timing, when you no longer tried to manage outcomes emotionally, when you stopped interpreting every delay as rejection, something shifted. You didn't become passive. You became grounded. And grounding changes everything. Heaven is always watching reactions, but it responds to responses. Reaction is driven by fear of loss. Response is driven by confidence in purpose. When your attitude matured into response, the spiritual atmosphere around you adjusted accordingly. Let me explain this gently, because this is where many people misunderstand God. Heaven does not reward calmness to make you feel special. Heaven responds to calmness because calmness indicates readiness. If your spirit is constantly unsettled, elevation would only overwhelm you. But when you remain steady under pressure, heaven knows you can carry weight. That is why this moment mattered. Your attitude told heaven you were no longer unstable, that you were no longer swayed by every delay or disappointment, that your faith was no longer conditional on immediate feedback. That is when observation turned into preparation. And yes, this is where the title connects deeply. Not in fantasy, not in exaggeration, but in truth. When your posture stabilized, when your inner world quieted, when discipline replaced emotional urgency, it registered in the spiritual realm as maturity. Not excitement. Maturity. This is what stunned the order of things. Because maturity changes assignment levels. Many people want answers, but few are prepared for responsibility. You showed heaven that you could be trusted with silence. That is not small. Silence requires more strength than speech when pressure is high. And you held it. You did not lash out when misunderstood. You did not chase affirmation when overlooked. You did not abandon your values when outcomes were delayed. That consistency interrupted the expectation heaven had based on human patterns. Heaven expects collapse when pressure extends. Heaven expects compromise when reward is delayed. Heaven expects bitterness when recognition is absent. But you did none of those. Instead, you stayed respectful, you stayed patient, You stayed internally aligned even when externally uncertain. That is not common. That is not learned overnight. That is forged through seasons of quiet endurance. This is why things began shifting subtly. Not outwardly yet, but inwardly. You felt less anxious, less reactive, more observant. You stopped needing to prove yourself. You stopped explaining your heart to those who couldn't hear it. That internal authority is what heaven responds to, because heaven does not empower those who need to defend themselves constantly. Heaven empowers those who are secure enough to let truth stand without force. Your attitude signaled readiness. And here is something important for you to hear, because many chosen ones misunderstand this phase. When heaven pauses, it is not confusion, it is recalibration. Systems adjust when alignment changes. Assignment shifts require evaluation. You were not being delayed, you were being repositioned. Your calm told heaven you would not misuse what comes next emotionally, that you would not be reckless with responsibility, that you would not collapse under visibility, that you would not let pride replace humility. This is why this moment was so quiet, because real preparation does not announce itself. I know part of you still wonders if anything truly changed. Let me answer that without hesitation. Yes, something changed. Not because you forced it, but because you became someone who could carry what is coming without losing yourself. Most people want blessings to fix their instability. God waits for stability before releasing blessings. Your attitude proved you were not seeking escape. You were seeking alignment. That interrupted the normal flow. Heaven did not expect you to remain composed without confirmation. Heaven did not expect you to stay respectful without reassurance. Heaven did not expect you to remain faithful without feedback, and yet you did. This is why heaven leaned in, not to applaud you, but to entrust you. Because where you are being led, emotional maturity will matter more than enthusiasm. Calm discernment will matter more than passion. Inner discipline will matter more than outward confidence. And you demonstrated all three without being told. Chosen one, do not underestimate what you carried yourself through quietly. Do not minimize the internal battles you won without witnesses. Those victories matter more than public ones. You did not interrupt heaven by demand. You interrupted it by becoming. And becoming is always more powerful than asking. This is why your season felt so introspective, why noise faded, why people fell away, why your circle tightened. Heaven was clearing distractions, not punishing you. It was refining focus. Your attitude told heaven you were ready to move without losing peace. And peace is the environment God trusts most. So if you felt a strange calm enter your life even before circumstances changed, now you know why. That calm was not resignation. It was confirmation. You crossed a threshold internally, and once that happens, nothing remains the same. Stay with me, because next I need to explain why so many would have broken under what you carried and why you did not. Section 5. Why most people would have broken, but you didn't. Chosen one, I want you to listen to this part slowly. Let it settle. Because this is where many of you carry hidden confusion. You look back at what you went through and you wonder, why didn't I fall apart like others did? Why didn't I give up when it felt unbearable? Why am I still standing when the weight should have crushed me? The answer is not that you are emotionless, and it is not that you were spared pain. It is that pressure reveals assignment, and your assignment required endurance, not escape. Most people break internally long before they break outwardly. They smile, they function, they speak faith, but something inside them fractures. Resentment creeps in. Hope thins out. Trust erodes quietly. You felt the pressure just as deeply as anyone else. You felt the loneliness. You felt the confusion. You felt the delay. But you did not allow those feelings to rewrite who you are. That is the difference. You didn't survive because you were tougher. You survived because you were anchored. Let me explain this clearly. When a person's identity is rooted in outcomes, pressure will always break them. When results delay, their confidence collapses. When recognition fades, their motivation disappears. When affirmation is absent, their faith weakens. But your identity was not rooted in outcomes. It was rooted in alignment, and alignment creates stability under strain. You did not need constant reassurance to remain faithful. You did not need applause to remain disciplined. You did not need quick results to remain respectful. That alone sets you apart. There were moments when you were tired in a way sleep could not fix. Moments when your mind replayed questions you couldn't answer. Moments when your heart wanted relief more than revelation. And still, you did not let frustration turn into rebellion. You did not let fatigue turn into disrespect. You did not let isolation turn into bitterness. That restraint is not accidental. It is the mark of someone who has been quietly prepared for responsibility. Most people crumble when they feel unseen. They begin to perform. They exaggerate. They demand attention. They seek validation in unhealthy ways. But you chose a different path. You stayed grounded. You stayed inwardly honest. You stayed committed even when no one was watching. That tells me something about you. It tells me that your strength was not borrowed from motivation. It was built through discipline. Discipline of thought, discipline of speech, discipline of reaction. And discipline always outlasts emotion. I want to address something gently because many chosen ones feel guilt about this. You may have wondered why others seemed to fall apart while you remained functional. You may have even questioned whether something was wrong with you emotionally. Let me release you from that confusion. You did feel deeply. You simply didn't let emotion lead you. You felt pain without becoming it. That is maturity. You see, breaking is not always loud. Sometimes breaking is subtle. It shows up as cynicism, as bitterness disguised as wisdom, as sarcasm disguised as humor, as distance disguised as self-protection. You could have chosen those paths. Many do. They feel justified. But you resisted that temptation. You chose softness without weakness. You chose patience without passivity. You chose trust without denial. That balance is rare. Most people break because they interpret pressure as punishment. You didn't. Even when you didn't fully understand what was happening, something inside you knew this was not random. That intuition kept you steady when logic could not. And yes, there were moments when you wanted to quit quietly, not loudly, not dramatically, just disappear from the weight of expectation. But you didn't. You stayed present. You stayed respectful. You stayed connected to God even when you felt tired of asking questions. That endurance is not common. It is cultivated. Let me tell you something important. God does not choose people because they are flawless. God chooses people who can remain humble under pressure, because humility preserves the heart when power comes later, and power will come later. Most people want relief from pressure. God uses pressure to reveal capacity. You carried more than you realized. You absorbed disappointment without letting it poison you. You endured silence without letting it harden you. You faced uncertainty without letting it dismantle your values. That is why you didn't break. You were not spared the storm. You were strengthened for it. And this is where many people misunderstand chosen ones. They assume chosen ones are emotionally detached, that they don't feel deeply, that they are somehow immune to pain. That is not true. Chosen ones feel more deeply. They are simply trained not to let emotion override obedience. You didn't numb yourself. You disciplined yourself. You learned when to speak and when to stay quiet, when to engage and when to step back, when to hold on and when to release control. That discernment protected you. And here is something that may surprise you. Heaven does not admire endurance for the sake of suffering. Heaven values endurance because it refines judgment. Pressure clarifies priorities. It strips away ego. It exposes what truly matters. And you allowed that process to happen without resistance. That is why you are still standing with your integrity intact. Many would have compromised their values to escape discomfort. Many would have lowered their standards to gain approval. Many would have abandoned discipline for relief. You didn't. And that choice mattered. You didn't break because your spirit was anchored in something deeper than comfort. You were anchored in purpose, even if you couldn't fully see it yet. Let me say this clearly so it settles in your spirit. You did not survive this season by accident. You were sustained intentionally. Strength was being built quietly. Emotional intelligence was being sharpened. Spiritual discernment was being refined. This was not about proving how much you could handle. It was about shaping who you would become. That is why your heart still feels tender instead of hardened. That is why your faith feels quieter but deeper. That is why your reactions are slower but wiser. That is why your presence feels calmer but stronger. You didn't break because breaking was never your assignment. You were meant to be refined, not shattered. And now that you understand this, you can finally stop questioning your resilience. You can stop wondering why you are different. You can stop comparing your journey to others. Your path required endurance, and you rose to it. Stay with me, because now I need to show you what heaven is preparing because of the attitude you carried through this season. Section 6. What heaven is preparing because of your attitude. Chosen one. Let me speak to you slowly here, because this is where impatience often tries to return. When people hear that heaven is preparing something, they immediately imagine outcomes, rewards, visible breakthroughs. But preparation in the spiritual realm does not begin with what you receive. It begins with who you can carry yourself as without losing alignment. What heaven is preparing is not rushed, and that is intentional. You see, preparation is not delay. Preparation is protection. If God moved too quickly, you might receive something before your inner world was steady enough to hold it. And God does not release weight into unstable hands, not because He withholds, but because He preserves. Your attitude signaled something critical. It told heaven that you were no longer desperate for outcomes, but committed to alignment. That shift changes the nature of what can be entrusted to you. When urgency fades and peace enters, heaven knows you will not misuse what comes next emotionally. Many people ask God for open doors, but few ask for the capacity to walk through them wisely. You are being shaped for wisdom, not speed. Heaven is preparing expansion, but not the kind that overwhelms you. It is preparing responsibility that fits your emotional maturity, influence that does not distort your humility, clarity that does not inflate ego. And let me be very clear here, because I do not want you chasing illusions. This preparation is not about instant elevation. It is about sustained stability. Anyone can rise quickly. Very few can remain grounded once they do. You are being trained to remain yourself even when circumstances change. There is a reason your inner world was worked on first. Because the inner world is where everything either survives or collapses. If peace does not exist internally, no external blessing will fix that. If discipline does not exist internally, opportunity will expose immaturity. God knows this. Heaven operates by this principle consistently. So what is being prepared is not just opportunity. It is capacity. Capacity to handle clarity without arrogance. Capacity to handle visibility without compromise. Capacity to handle responsibility without resentment. Capacity to handle abundance without losing reverence. This is why attitude mattered so much. You showed heaven that you could be trusted with quiet seasons. That means you can be trusted with louder ones. You showed heaven that you did not need constant reassurance to remain faithful. That means you will not panic when accountability increases. You showed heaven that you could endure silence without bitterness. That means you will not misuse authority later. Preparation always happens where no one is clapping. Let me ease something in your mind right now. You are not being tested again and again because you failed the first time. You are being layered. Strength builds in layers. Discernment builds in layers. Wisdom builds in layers. Each season adds depth, not punishment. Heaven is preparing precision in you. Precision in how you speak. Precision in how you respond. Precision in what you tolerate. Precision in what you ignore. That kind of refinement takes time, because imprecision causes damage once influence increases. You may have noticed that your tolerance for chaos has decreased, that you step away from unnecessary conflict faster, that you protect your peace more intentionally, that you no longer feel the need to explain yourself to everyone. These are not signs of withdrawal. These are signs of readiness. Heaven prepares by removing distractions, not by adding noise. Another thing heaven is preparing is discernment, not suspicion. Discernment. You are learning to sense before you speak, to observe before you commit, to pause before you react. That skill will protect you from future confusion. And let me say this plainly, because chosen ones often misunderstand this part. Preparation does not always feel encouraging. Sometimes it feels lonely. Sometimes it feels repetitive. Sometimes it feels like nothing is happening. But something is always happening beneath the surface. Roots grow where no one sees. Heaven is preparing alignment between your character and your assignment. Because when those two are mismatched, collapse is inevitable. God will not allow that for you. Your attitude during the waiting season showed heaven that you are not chasing escape. You are seeking understanding. That makes you safe to elevate. What is being prepared will require calm judgment. It will require emotional intelligence. It will require spiritual discernment. It will require patience under pressure. And you have been trained for that quietly. You may not feel ready. That is normal. Readiness is not about confidence. It is about stability. And stability you have. Let me also address something gently. Do not assume preparation means something dramatic is about to happen immediately. Sometimes preparation means consistency will be rewarded gradually. Sometimes it means influence will grow quietly. Sometimes it means responsibility will increase subtly. Not everything heaven prepares arrives with spectacle. What matters is sustainability. You are being prepared to last, not just to arrive. Many people burn out because they reach places their inner world cannot sustain. You are being protected from that. Another thing heaven is preparing is clarity of purpose. You may have felt your priorities shift. Things that once mattered no longer hold the same weight. That is not loss. That is focus. When purpose sharpens, distractions fade naturally. Your attitude allowed this clarity to emerge without force. Heaven is also preparing restoration in areas you didn't even realize needed healing. Emotional resilience, trust in timing, confidence without arrogance, authority without harshness. These things cannot be rushed. I want you to hear this clearly because impatience often whispers lies at this stage. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not overlooked. You are being refined with intention, and refinement always precedes responsibility. If God were to release everything you asked for earlier, it would have cost you peace. Now, when it comes, it will not. That is preparation. So resist the urge to rush God. Resist the temptation to compare timelines. Resist the voice that says nothing is happening. Heaven does not waste seasons. Your attitude proved you could trust without seeing. That is why you will see without losing yourself. And when things begin to unfold, you will recognize that this season was not empty. It was essential. Take another breath here. Let your mind rest. You are not required to push. You are not required to strive. You are required to remain aligned. That is all heaven is asking of you right now. Stay with me, because next I need to show you how to guard this attitude in the season that is coming, so that nothing steals what has been built within you. Section 7. How to guard this attitude in the next season. Chosen one. Now we move into wisdom. Not excitement, not urgency. Wisdom. Because the attitude you carried through the last season must be protected in the next one. What you survived refined you. What is coming will require you to guard that refinement carefully. Here is the truth many people are never told. Breakthrough seasons are not dangerous because of opposition. They are dangerous because of distraction. When pressure lifts, discipline is often tempted to relax. When peace enters, discernment is often tested. And when clarity comes, many forget what kept them grounded in the first place. You must not. Guarding your attitude does not mean becoming rigid. It means becoming intentional. You are not meant to harden yourself. You are meant to protect your inner alignment. The first thing you must guard is your need to explain yourself. In the last season, silence protected you. In the next one, discernment must guide you. Not everyone deserves access to your process. Not everyone needs to understand your decisions. Clarity does not require consensus. You are allowed to move quietly even when progress becomes visible. Another thing you must guard is your emotional boundaries. Peace is not passive. Peace is defended. You have learned how quickly unnecessary conversations can drain energy, how easily emotional noise can disrupt focus. Guard your environment. Guard your attention. Guard what you allow to influence your thinking. Not everything requires a response. In fact, many things lose power when you refuse to engage them emotionally. You must also guard your posture toward people. As things shift, you may notice changes in how others perceive you. Some will celebrate quietly. Some will misunderstand loudly. Do not let either affect your posture. Appreciation should not inflate you. Misunderstanding should not irritate you. Stay grounded. Your strength has never been in proving yourself. It has been in staying aligned. Another thing you must guard is impatience disguised as ambition. There is a subtle difference between moving forward and rushing ahead. You are allowed to progress. You are not required to force outcomes. Let consistency do the work. Urgency cannot. You learned patience in silence. Do not abandon it now that movement begins. Also, guard your speech. As confidence increases, so does the temptation to speak prematurely. Silence taught you discernment. Carry that lesson forward. Speak with purpose. Speak with clarity. Speak with restraint. Words carry weight when alignment is present. Not everything you see needs commentary. Not every thought needs expression. Wisdom knows when to hold space. You must guard humility as well. Not false humility, but grounded humility. Remember how it felt to wait. Remember how it felt to trust without reassurance. That memory will keep you compassionate, steady, and self-aware. Humility preserves access. Pride isolates. Another important guardrail is consistency. Emotional highs and lows will try to return. That is normal. What matters is not intensity, but stability. Stay consistent in how you think. Stay consistent in how you respond. Stay consistent in how you align your choices with your values. You do not need to be intense to be effective. You need to be steady. You must also guard against overexposure. Not everyone needs access to your inner world. You have learned the value of privacy. Keep it. Intimacy should be selective. Transparency should be purposeful. Oversharing creates vulnerability without wisdom. Protect your inner life. That is where everything else flows from. Another thing to guard is comparison. Timelines differ for a reason. You are not late. You are not early. You are positioned. Comparing your journey to others will only distort gratitude and disrupt focus. Stay in your lane. Your assignment is specific. Comparison dilutes clarity. You must also guard your peace from guilt-driven striving. You do not owe constant productivity to justify your worth. You do not need to exhaust yourself to prove faithfulness. Rest is not rebellion. Pausing is not failure. Recovery is part of sustainability. Let peace guide your pace. And finally, guard your trust in God's timing. The same trust that carried you through silence must carry you through movement. Do not switch strategies now. Do not abandon alignment because things begin to shift. Trust is not seasonal. It is constant. You did not come this far to lose discernment. You did not endure this much to become careless. You did not learn restraint to abandon wisdom. Chosen one, guarding your attitude is not about fear. It is about stewardship. You are stewarding clarity now. You are stewarding peace. You are stewarding maturity. And stewardship always determines longevity. You have already proven you can endure. Now you are learning how to remain aligned when endurance is no longer required daily. That is a different kind of strength. Carry this season gently. Move forward intentionally. Stay inwardly anchored. Let your posture remain calm even as life becomes louder. Nothing that was built in silence should be lost in noise. Stay with me because now we come to the closing. And there is one last thing you need to hear before you move forward. Section 8. Conclusion. Heaven saw you, and you were never alone. Chosen one. Take a moment here. Let your mind be still. Let your breathing slow. Because after everything you've heard, There is one truth I want to leave resting gently in your spirit. You were never unseen, you were never forgotten, and you were never walking alone, even when it felt quiet. Heaven saw you when no one applauded. Heaven saw you when you chose restraint over reaction. Heaven saw you when you stayed aligned without reassurance. Nothing about your endurance went unnoticed. Nothing about your patience was wasted. What felt like silence was actually observation. What felt like delay was actually preparation. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not catching up. You are positioned. The calm that entered you before circumstances changed was not accidental. It was confirmation. You are being steadied so that when movement begins, it does not steal your peace. You are being refined so that when responsibility increases, it does not distort your heart. Do not rush the next step. Do not doubt what has already been built within you. You have been shaped quietly, intentionally, lovingly, and that shaping will carry you further than force ever could. Trust what God has done in you. Trust what He is doing through you. And trust that what comes next will meet you at the right time, not a moment before. Before we part, chosen ones, give a like to this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, tap the bell icon so you don't miss what's coming next, and share this message with other chosen ones who need peace and clarity right now. And comment 777 below as a declaration that you are aligned, steady, and walking in God's purpose for your life. Go forward calmly. Stay anchored. Heaven is not finished with you.